The American presidents were people like you and like me, or at least that's how the founders intended them to be. Hi, my name's Teddy Ebby. Welcome back to my recurring series where we're talking about the nicknames of the US presidents, both past and present. Last time we talked about the positive nicknames of President number 7, Andrew Jackson. I won't keep it a secret. Andrew Jackson is not one of my favorite presidents.
Frankly, I don't like the guy, but I never saw a hooligan I did like.
So it was difficult finding positive nicknames for the man that I thought applied and were historically truthful. Today we really get to rip into him because we're going to be doing his negative nicknames and more than the original 3 I had planned. Andrew Jackson was a president with promise. As one of the first presidents not to come from the elite classes, there were many hopes about who he would be, and in many ways, he fell terribly short.
What a disappointment you turned out to be.
This can be perfectly seen in the first nickname that we're talking about today because his political opponents called him King Andrew I. He was most likely called this because Jackson used the presidential powers much like the military man he was. Many of his enemies and even some of his allies worried that he was stepping beyond his constitutional limits. He vetoed more bills sent to his desk by Congress than the other 6 US presidents before him combined.
No use vetoing that program, Johnson.
Not only that, but he even defied the Supreme Court when he refused to enforce their decision in Worcester v. Georgia.
You can't tell me what to do because you're not my mom.
This all landed him with that famous, or rather infamous, negative nickname, and a timeless political cartoon to boot. All in all, the worry that Jackson took a step towards making the presidency a cult of personality weren't entirely unfounded. And this moves us into a darker negative nickname. In nickname number 2, he was called Sharp Knife by many Native American tribes. It is an unfortunately well-known fact that Andrew Jackson held no love for the indigenous peoples of the Americas. From his military campaigns against the Creek Indigenous Nation to his support and enforcement of the Indian Removal Act, which resulted in the Trail of Tears, a borderline genocidal event that is and will forever be a stain on American history. Native peoples used the nickname Sharp Knife not to emphasize his bravery, but his brutality and betrayal, and his figurative cutting up of treaties that had guaranteed them land rights. Bringing things back up to a lighter note with negative nickname number 3, he was also mocked as the Jackass.
Well, if it's all the same to you, I'll just call you Jackass.
His political opponents used this nickname to stress Jackson's stubbornness and ignorance. But this kind of backfired because Jackson loved the idea of being associated with the donkey, enjoying the association with toughness and determination. So much so that the donkey became the figurative animal for the Jacksonian Democrats and even endures as the Democratic Party's emblem today. And finally, that bonus negative nickname that I promised you. He was also known as Old Hickory-Headed. It was actually a riff off of one of the positive nicknames that I talked about where he was known as Old Hickory. While that positive nickname emphasized his toughness and durability, this one flipped the script. Jackson was stubborn to a fault, and that often got him in trouble. And this was clearest when he found himself on the wrong side of a policy debate. Jackson was not a well-educated man, and oftentimes he was too stubborn and too stupid to recognize that he might be wrong.
Can't you get it through your thick skull I'm working for the government?
Though psychologists wouldn't study the idea of stupid people being more likely to think they're smart until centuries later, his enemies would have you believe that Jackson was a walking, talking Dunning-Kruger effect. With that being said, I'm Teddy Ebby. Thank you again for joining me on this continuing segment where we talked about Andrew Jackson's 4 most popular negative nicknames. Join me next time when we talk about the next president, Martin Van Buren, and his 3 most popular positive nicknames.